Lisa Rice will be going to talk to Abu Mazen tomorrow, as well as Prime Minister Omar, working with both parties together to see how we can advance the vision that the Prime Minister himself talked about earlier this week. My advice is support reasonable people and reject extremists. Understand that most people want to live in peace and harmony and security. It's very important for the American people to understand that most Muslim mothers want their children to grow up in peace, and they're interested in peace. And it's in our interest to help liberty prevail in the Middle East, starting with Iraq. And that's why this business about graceful exit just simply has no realism to it at all. We're going to help this government. And I'm able to say that we have a government that wants our help and is becoming more capable about taking the lead in the fight to protect our own country. The only way that Iraq is going to be able to succeed is when the Iraqis, led by a capable person, says we're tired of it. We don't want violence. We want the peace that our 12 million people voted for. And it's in the world's interest that Iraq succeed. Mr. Prime Minister, you want to answer some more questions? You want one? Go ahead. Hold on for a minute.
We said 6th question. Now this is the 7th, and this is the 8th questions. Mr. President.
Am I calling on one of your press corps, please? Yes. Yeah, this guy? Okay.
In light of the war that the United States is fighting against terror in Iraq, what has been accomplished? What do you expect to be accomplished after a 3-year confrontation? Another question. Other people are accusing the United States of bringing terrorism to Iraq. And the proof is that what's going on in Iraq and what's going on in Afghanistan. The proof is that, and what's the biggest loser is the Iraqi citizen.
That's an interesting analysis. The biggest loser for a free society is the Iraqi citizen when this society was just liberated from the grips of a brutal tyrant that killed thousands and thousands of the Iraqi citizens. What has been accomplished is the liberation of a country from a tyrant who is now sitting in jail, getting a trial that he was unwilling to give thousands of people he murdered himself or had murdered. Secondly, this country has a constitution which is one of the most modern constitutions ever written in the Middle East. This is a government that has been elected by the people. No question, it's tough. But the reason why terrorists are trying to stop the advance of freedom in Iraq is the very reason why we need to help them. Because they can't stand democracies and they want to impose a hateful vision on as much of the world as possible. They want safe haven from which to launch attacks again. A safe haven in Iraq, a country that has got a lot of resources, would be very dangerous for America. It didn't take but 19 people who were trained in Afghanistan to get on airplanes and come and kill over 3,000 citizens in my country. Threats that gather overseas must be taken seriously if we want to protect ourselves. And the best way to protect ourselves is to hunt down the terrorists and to help young democracy survive. Freedom and liberty is the great alternative to the hateful vision of those who are willing to murder innocent lives to achieve their objective. And so you bet it's worth it in Iraq and necessary. And I was very proud and pleased to see 12 million Iraqis go to the polls to be able to express their desires, their wishes, as they helped put a government in place that this man now leads.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
President Bush clearly relishing the opportunity there to speak with the press, taking the decision on the fly to extend that press conference beyond the usual 3 questions. Not unprecedented, but highly unusual to say the least. So George W. Bush and Iraq's Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki there, their news conference in Amman, Jordan. President Bush said that they'd had a productive breakfast meeting, the 3rd time they'd met since the Prime Minister came to office. The President praised Mr. al-Maliki's strong leadership. He's a strong leader, he said, who wants a free and democratic Iraq to succeed. The U.S., he said, is determined to help bring stability to Iraq. The U.S. is willing to make changes to help the unity government. The success of that government, he said, is critical to stability in Iraq. The U.S.'s goal in Iraq, he said, is to support the unity government. The partitioning of Iraq is not an option. The Prime Minister made it quite clear that splitting his country into parts, as some have suggested, is not what the Iraqi people want, and that any partition of Iraq would only lead to an increase in sectarian violence. Mr. Bush said that after nearly 2.5 hours of talks aimed at stabilizing Iraq, that he agreed. Mr. al-Maliki, though, left the door open for countries like Iran and Syria to play a part in the struggle for peace. So let's get some immediate reaction now. First from Baghdad, CNN's Awa Damon joins us live from there. Awa, what do you make of what you heard?
Well, Adrian, we really didn't hear anything new, not from either side. If anyone here was expecting a new breakthrough plan, they will be greatly disappointed. We basically heard what we have heard in the past, an accelerated plan to hand over authority to the Iraqi government, to the Iraqi security forces. Something that has been one of the main challenges here is building up those Iraqi security forces. And in fact, when you speak with many of the U.S. military commanders on the ground that are working side by side with them, they don't believe that accelerating their training, accelerating the process of handing over is going to help. They believe that they still need to continue to work together. When we talk about the Iraqi security forces, we're dealing with issues of militia infiltration, of a lack of training, of a lack of equipment. We have also seen a trend whereby which once an area is handed over to the Iraqi security forces, for the most part, once the Americans withdraw, the Iraqi security forces are unable to maintain the same low level of violence that allowed the handover to happen. We saw both leaders flat out skirt one of the core issues here, the radical Shia cleric Muqtada al-Sadr, how he and his Mahdi militia are going to be dealt with, be it politically or militarily. The same theme we have heard in the past, that Iraqi security forces need to be trained up, that this is the right government for the job, that Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki is the right man for the job. But for many Iraqis, when you ask them if their prime minister and if their current government is going to be the government that's going to bring them with security, they will just tell you no. He's not the man for the job. And in fact, just to give you one example, one of our Iraqi cameramen was watching this press conference and he was laughing, hearing what the Prime Minister Maliki was saying, what President Bush was saying. These are things Iraqis have heard before. There is no plan that is going to reassure them that moving forward, their country will have stability. Adrian?
All right, well, let's bring in CNN's Hala Garani, who was listening to that press conference there in Amman, Jordan. This meeting between the two leaders, Hala, postponed from Wednesday night. It's been billed as crucial. What do you make of a president who was clearly relishing the opportunity there and being quite passionate about Iraq in that extended press conference?
Well, and just as passionate publicly about his support for Nouri al-Maliki from the very start there, telling the audience and the gathered journalists and the world that Nouri al-Maliki, quote, is the man for the job. He's the right guy for Iraq, and we're going to help him, and we're going to support his government. And from the very beginning there, outlining that he and the Iraqi Prime Minister share a common vision on Iraq. Listen to what the president said. All right, I'm not sure if we have that soundbite. Not sure, we do not have that soundbite for you, but essentially saying what Arwa there was outlining, some of those plans to strengthen Iraqi security forces, support the government. Now, it's worth mentioning that the Iraq Study Group, and these are sources telling CNN, will suggest, and this is the bipartisan study group that is tasked with finding alternate solutions to solve the Iraq crisis, will suggest a gradual but meaningful troop reduction in the new year. President Bush, though, in this news conference once reiterating the fact and the idea that the U.S. will stay in Iraq militarily until, quote, the job is done. So there you have an outlining of ideas that, as Arwa Damon and others are saying, have been heard before. But mainly, this is a show of solidarity between the Iraqi prime minister. And you'll remember that yesterday he did not show up to a meeting with George W. Bush at a trilateral meeting. He said today in the news conference, downplaying that event, saying that there was no trilateral meeting ever planned, so that in effect there was no problem. Adrian?
In Baghdad, Prime Minister al-Maliki said that he would not allow anyone to interfere with Iraqi internal affairs. However, he said we are ready to cooperate with everybody who wants to communicate with the national government, appearing to leave the door open for countries like Iran and Syria to play a part in Iraq. He said, we're ready to cooperate with everyone who believes that that they have a need to cooperate with the national unity government, especially our neighbors. What's the significance of that?
Well, Adrian, again, those are words that we have heard before. Remember, Iraq realizes that it cannot provide its own security if it does not have the support of its neighbors, namely Syria and Iran. Iraq just recently renewed its diplomatic ties with Syria. We saw a joint effort both from Syria and Iraq, pledges that both would work towards securing their border. Remember, the U.S. and Iraq have accused Syria of allowing terrorists, foreign fighters, funds for the insurgency, and weapons to come across the Syrian border. And the same goes for Iran, although Iraq and Iran have maintained a fairly close relationship since the fall of Saddam Hussein. In fact, Iraqi President Talabani is in Iran, just wrapping up a visit there. And again, the topic of conversation there is securing Iraq. But the crucial issue is, what is the difference? Where is that line between working with your neighbors and having your neighbors actively involved in your internal politics? Both U.S. and British intelligence indicate that Iran is directly responsible for funding, arming, and training death squads in Iraq. They claim that they're Iranian operatives that are working inside Iraq's borders. The belief amongst the intelligence community is that Iran wants a stable but a weak Iraq. So again, it's a fine line between cooperating with your neighbors and having them actively involved inside your country. Adrian?
And Hala, both leaders appear to throw off questions following up on yesterday's disclosure of U.S. doubts about the Iraqi leader's capabilities and the protest in Baghdad about his attendance. The president, as you said a few moments ago, keen to stress how behind al-Maliki he was and the strength of his leadership.
Yes, and you have to put this, Adrian, in the context really of what's happening at home for both of those leaders. Nouri al-Maliki is under pressure. He suffered the withdrawal of cabinet ministers and politicians, a lawyer to Muqtada al-Sadr, Shiite Muqtada al-Sadr. Inside of America, you have George Bush, whose party just lost congressional elections, and also with an increasing problem that this administration is facing with regards to the popularity of this war. So you do have to look at it in this context. This was a public relations effort. This was a news conference and a meeting aimed at trying to reassure the constituents in both countries that there can be a solution. And it's also aimed at highlighting the fact that George W. Bush supports Nouri al-Maliki, despite the fact that yesterday, as we have mentioned several times, he did not show up at that three-way meeting. And despite the fact that a leaked memo by the U.S. National Security Advisor Stephen Hadley included some stinging remarks regarding Nouri al-Maliki's ability to control and solve the problems that Iraq is facing today. Adrian?
All right, Hala Garani in Amman. Our Damon in Baghdad, many thanks. At this point, we'll bid farewell to viewers in the United States who return now to their own scheduled programming.
Struggling with embarrassing facial hair? Well, put that tweezer and mirror away, because now it's easy with Tweezy. Tweezy is an amazing breakthrough that not only automatically finds, grasps and removes unwanted hair, but helps keep hair from growing back for weeks. Guaranteed.
The secret is Tweezy's patented technology that attracts hair like a magnet from every angle, so it's virtually impossible to miss a hair. It's 30 times faster than ordinary tweezers.
And unlike razors or trimmers that cause ugly stubble, Tweezy removes hair from the root, so you can go for weeks without worrying about unwanted hair.
Watch, we used a trimmer on one side of this chin and Tweezy on the other. And look, 6 weeks later, the Tweezy side is still smooth.
There's never been anything like it. If you can feel it, Tweezy can remove it.
I used to use trimmers every day, but I used Tweezy on my lips 6 weeks ago, and it's still smooth.
Sometimes it's hard to see if I got all the hairs on my face. But with Tweezy, I have confidence that all my embarrassing hairs are gone, and it lasts for weeks.
Tweezy is portable, safe, and gentle. Use Tweezy to remove unwanted hair around your chin, lip, underarms, legs, feet, and more. At last, you can have a beautiful bikini line. No more razor burn, no more waxing. Electrolysis is expensive, and plucking takes forever. But Tweezy is easy. You'll never have to worry about unwanted hair again. But wait, call within the next 10 minutes and you'll get MJoy's Hair Growth Inhibitor. Helps leave skin soft and hair-free for weeks. Imagine that's a $60 value, all for only $19.95.
I guarantee Tweezy is the best way to remove unwanted hair for weeks or your money back. Just remember, if it's easy, it's Tweezy. Call now.
Call 1-800-610-4353 to get your Tweezy hair remover for $19.95. Call now and get the bonus hair growth inhibitor absolutely free. That's 1-800-610-4353.
What happens when new technology overcomes carelessness? Because we consider what might change tomorrow, our customers can feel more relaxed about what might happen today. Zurich, because change happens.